So I'm going to answer why exactly I have 288 hours on Borderlands 2. Today I'm going to be answering why I have 265 hours on Borderlands 2. So recently it's kind of come to my attention that Borderlands is a really big game and most people know about it, which I found surprising. I thought it was kind of a niche game that has kind of a small community that is thriving and still alive. But, it turns out it's a really big community. This game is the classic loot shooter. I feel like it's the one that started them all. But hey, I haven't done any research about it, but I feel like this was the first one, at least the first big one to come out. And when you play this game, you'll be collecting. This game starts off with a story to keep you interested and keep you going. Usually, I feel like in a game that has a generally fun core to it, maybe like a loot shooter or maybe a survival game, I tend to forgive there just being no story or a crappy story. But hey, in this game, it doesn't hurt to have it. From there, you'll fight your first enemies with a very weak weapon, and your first time through, this will be a little bit of a challenge, but not too bad. But when you play this game multiple times in different difficulties, this is just a piece of cake, and it is so strange to see the difference in challenge it provides for new players compared to people like me who have so many hours. After that, you'll end up fighting your first human enemies. You'll make your way to an abandoned city where you'll be able to choose from a few quests. And I from there, later your quests will bring you through large large enemy a very large enemy camp where you'll fight through a crap ton of enemies. Well, it'll feel like a crap ton, but once you play through this game, you'll realize that's just the normal amount of enemies you're going to be facing throughout each level. The story is quite generic and not very inspired. The world is quite interesting, which helps motivate you through the story. But what really gets you to play this game is the humor. It's surprisingly very funny, but to tell you the truth, when you listen to it over and over again, none of it sticks. It gets really annoying. I mean, that's kind of to be expected when it comes to comedy, but in this game or any other Borderland games like it that I've played so far, it seems to be especially worse. I don't know what it is, but the Borderlands humor, it's only funny the first time. But you hear it again and it gets really annoying. I'm going to show you an example of a funny joke that you hear towards the beginning. And, the first time maybe you might laugh, but the second time you listen to it, you're going to get very annoyed. When you're going through the game for maybe the first, 15 minutes, when you're fighting those beginning enemies, what's going to go through your head is what keeps people playing it. I mean, at that point, at those first 20 minutes, it is quite a generic game. Nothing really interesting happens. You're just shooting enemies, and you're hearing a little bit of audio as the characters talk in some sort of generic radio chatter thing they have in the future, whatever you call it. And it's very hard to tell what makes this game special. That's not until you go into the first encampment of enemies that I was talking about earlier. That is when you get your first chance of getting an interesting weapon. What this game does well at first is they really make you feel like the weapons you're getting are something important. When I first started playing this, every time I opened up open up some sort of weapon cache or chest, whatever there is, I actually kind of felt bad because I had to sacrifice and ditch so many weapons that I thought were amazing. I mean, before this, the kind of game I played with a large arsenal of weapons was something like Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas, and every the guns you find there, there's not a huge variety. You'll end up running to the same weapons uh, after many hours. But in this game, I thought I was running to different weapons all the time. So I thought I thought it was how I would in Fallout. I thought I got to keep this. I got to store this somewhere else and uh, use it for when I need it. But it turns out there's so many weapons in the game, and it's to the point where you don't need to worry if you're throwing away weapons that you think you should be keeping. In fact, if you have your first playthrough on the normal difficulty, to tell you the truth, you really don't need to worry about throwing away weapons at all. Or the thing is, the difficulty level is so easy that it doesn't even matter. Yeah, sorry to ruin that for you, but the first time you play, you feel like it matters what kind of guns you choose. Uh, but if you really want to choose the best weapons and you're looking at all the stats and you're kind of overwhelmed not knowing what to choose, let me give you a little recommendation. What I usually go for are an elemental weapons. Elemental weapons are just so much more powerful than non-elemental weapons in general. Yeah, that may not be so obvious. Another thing I look for is the fire rate. A good fire rate can basically kind of just means double damage or whatever it is, which is very important. And also one thing I do is make sure the magazine size isn't too low. You know, just you don't need to worry about looking for a super high magazine size. Just make sure it's not a really low one. Another thing you should look for is the amount of ammo uses per shot. That can make it so your magazine size, if it's like really big, that it can end up becoming a problem. Like shotgun, it'll have 24 bullets per shot sometimes, but then it'll shoot about like 8 bullets. It'll have 24 bullets in a magazine, but then it'll shoot 8 bullets per shot. You could only shoot about 3 times. So that's like a crappy magazine size. So high fire rate and elemental weapon. That's what you should look for if you're new. Anyways, back to the main scheduled format. Back to the story. What really makes this story so generic and uninteresting are how really comes from how the events unfold in the game. It seems like whenever a struggle happens or something stops you from progressing, it's like I really get the sense that it's an excuse to get you to shoot more crap. So now I've played Borderlands for over maybe about 300 something hours, and I've accumulated a lot of opinion about the game. A few that I want to express. The first thing starts off with the progression system, getting all the weapons and items you want in order to continue to get better stuff and be stronger. Now, the thing with this is that after a while, you end up you just stop. It's not very interesting because it's just higher numbers on the same looking weapons. Although, when you go higher in level, the weapons tend to look much better. I think while getting weapons has to do with what makes getting weapons so interesting to begin with is how you get a lot. How the weapons you get are always end up being better as you go up in level, and that kind of little guarantee always gets you to want to level up or just find the better weapons wherever they may be. And to many, this isn't a very fun way of going about it, but honestly, this is the best system I've seen where this has been done to date. I've played Destiny and what's another game like that? Hell, most recently I played Warhammer Vermintide 2, that Left 4 Dead like game. That game, Borderlands, I feel does it the best. I honestly can't pin it down at this exact moment what it is, but it just has one of the more rewarding kind of systems there is out there. another thing has to do with that I like about the Borderlands 2 game is the the whole idea that you have multiple people to play as. Now there's a lot of games like this where that's the case, but with this, it's the fact that each character takes so long and it's such an investment to level up. It it really makes it so that the content in the game is artificially extended, but honestly, in a good way. I mean, it really does kind of feel like more content. To look at your select characters section and to see all these characters level 72. I mean, that's not me. I only have one guy who's up to level 72, but I mean, that's honestly what you shoot for, and that's really what gets you to play through each character up to level 72 each time. Another thing has to it's the end game in Borderlands 2. Now, the problem with end games in most games is the fact that it's that you can't really decide what's an end game. The end game, honestly, is just the feeling that you've reached your maximum amount of power, your maximum level, the max you can rank up at all. And a lot of a lot of developers always make it so it's very hard to get to the maximum amount, which ends up just feeling very frustrating and annoying. And with Borderlands 2, it's really tough to a certain point. But one thing that I've seen done that's really good was how to getting to an acceptable place, a place where you're comfortable and maybe you can you could do what you want without you could follow all the guides on YouTube, do what you want. It just takes leveling up, honestly. It just takes work, and that's honestly what it should be. It shouldn't be a case of it of just knowing obscure knowledge, getting things from events. An example I could think of has to do with shit. I can't think of an example. What I've noticed is how you can to getting to a comfortable place where you could do what you want is pretty easy, but you could always continue to improve your character in Borderlands 2. The thing is, the difficulty is incredibly it's kind of unfair most of the time. I mean, you're just dying all the time, and what I've noticed is that I just have to get used to dying. You have to just be okay with the fact that you're just gonna die and it's gonna suck in Borderlands 2. And the thing is, when you get a certain type of build that you see on YouTube, those crazy YouTubers who always have like thousands of hours in Borderlands 2, who make these build videos and know what they're doing. Like, you do that, and then all of a sudden the game is much easier. I'm sure it could get to a point where it's way too easy. And and I've done a few builds like that up to a certain point, and honestly, that's I feel like that's where the charm of the game comes from. It's the fact that it can be easy and still fun anyways, because like you've worked to that point where it's gotten easy. And the thing is, like, you could always continue that. You could always continue to make it easier for yourself. You could get better through skill and practice, and then at the same time, like, I mean, if you've played the game long enough, like maybe like a couple thousand hours, like you could probably make a new build yourself that's like new in the whole meta of Borderlands 2. And just knowing that, I know so far there's a lot of games out there that already does that, but this is specifically a game that I've played myself, where I've gone far enough to learn a little more of the intricacies of the game itself.